The Elder Witcher Vesemir. So not only are we getting his story, we're getting in a unique, different style. So this is the anime Witcher Vesemir Nightmare of the Wolf.
Welcome back to AsArt with Nick and John. We're diving into another animation today. We just can't get enough of animation, and it's all because John loves The Witcher, so we just want more Witcher stuff. And we're like, yes, we'll just consume Witcher material. And we're like, wait a minute. John's like, Nick, did you know there was an animated Witcher show? I'm like, what? What? There's something other than the live action? And he's like, you got to watch it. I'm like, I'm watching it now. And here we are to talk about this beautiful animation. I have to say it's beautiful.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
looks really good.
And it's funny because a lot of this is building off of each other. So I typically, and if you guys have seen other content on here, I'm not typically an anime fan, but Nick has kind of roped me into watching the Studio Ghibli films, and I'm starting to really like that. So I'm like, hey, maybe I'll try other stuff. And I know they have Castlevania and they have this Witcher, kind of anime. I'm like, you know what? Let's try this out. And it was really, really fun. And then Nick's like, all right, cool. I'll watch it too. We just finished Witcher season 2, and everything's just kind of merging into each other, leading from one to the other. And it's been a really fun journey. And this was a really fun movie that kind of added to the lore, kind of leads right into the story of Geralt and actually is referenced quite a bit in season 2. Some of the lore and world building that happens in this anime is referenced in season 2 of The Witcher, which is kind of fun. Yeah. So they've tied it together under this, kind of Netflix banner, which is fun.
Spoilers, just in case if we spoil it, if you haven't watched it, because this might also spoil stuff for The Witcher show too. So if you have not even watched The Witcher show, maybe, I don't know, but just in case, spoilers, we just want to be warned. Be warned. Okay, so one thing I have to mention about this animation. One, the studio that worked on it is Studio Mirror, and they worked on Legend of Korra, which has beautiful animation. And what's so cool about the Avatar world is they fight with elements, right? So they use water and rocks. So each fighting style is different, depending on what they're using. Mm-hmm. Man, the sword play, the movement, everything looks so good. With the timing and the poses of the animation and the camera work. I was just ecstatic by this. Good. I was just like, dude, this looks freaking good. And even the arrows going through it look good. It looks sick.
And it's funny because what you're saying about what they did. So I wasn't familiar with the studio and the Avatar Last Airbender. I'm not familiar with that. So when Nick said, oh, it's the studio and this, I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. But you explaining, this and that and the other, that sounds perfect for Witcher signs and for that type of stuff. So I'm curious. I wonder if they pitched the idea to Netflix. Hey, we'd like to do a series based on this. Or I wonder if Netflix reached out to them. It's interesting because behind the scenes, you don't really know how this stuff comes up unless they make it publicly known. I'm always curious about that. That'd be fascinating to know. And maybe someone knows. If any of you know that, put that down in the comments below. I'd love to know that. That'd be fun trivia.
You know what's interesting? They might be working with them in the future because I think they're doing another Avatar animated show.
So
I don't know if it's,
have a relationship.
I don't know if it's going to be going through Netflix or Paramount Plus or whatever, because Nickelodeon owns the Avatar. So it's I don't know how that works, but maybe just within talks of them talking about maybe doing an Avatar show, maybe they're just like, oh, hey, we have this other property. You guys have some good work. And, everything worked out, I guess, because the show came out and it looked awesome.
Yeah. And that does make sense. Once you have a working relationship with the studio, they can do it, especially if they have a track record of doing somewhat similar stuff. Like, hey, cool. We know you're reliable. We have a good working relationship with you. Our pipeline's worked out. Would you like to do this? And cool. So yeah, that would seem like it would make perfect sense.
Yes. And can I just say, were you a fan of the time jumps again? Because I know season 1 of The Witcher, they had the time jumps and we're like, what's up with the time jumps? And obviously this could have been written around the same time they were writing, season 1 of The Witcher. Ooh, yeah, let's just keep time jumps everywhere. Ooh, let's do it to mess with people's minds who don't know the lore. But I was just like, time jumps are happening, right?
Nothing pulled me out of it here. Everything worked fine. So for me in this case, everything was paced or done in a way that didn't feel like I was like, wait, what's going on? It was either, in The Witcher season 1, I'm not sure if they did it in a way where you were supposed to be confused. Because sometimes they will do it on purpose where you're supposed to be confused and you're like, oh, this makes sense now. It's supposed to click with the audience. And I don't know if that's what they intended, but that's what it felt like for a lot of people for season 1 of The Witcher. And in this animated Witcher movie, it didn't feel like I was confused. Did you?
No.
Did it bother you at all?
I think it worked because it was just like one movie. It wasn't like an 8 episode arc.
Yes.
Where it's
Which
like
is
going
funny
on
because
over
that
8 hours.
And that's what I thought it was when I had first heard about this Witcher Netflix, is I thought it was a series. And I'm actually surprised. Netflix tends to they put out a lot of movies too, but I thought it was going to be a series like Castlevania or whatever. And I was actually surprised. I'm like, oh, this is a standalone one-off movie. I'm surprised they actually did that. Would you have liked to have seen a series instead, or do you like that it was just a one-off movie?
I'm happy it was just a movie, because I feel like sometimes you try to drag more out, and I feel like for this story, it was like, okay, we can kind of get this character's arc. I mean, he meets up in the live action kind of stuff, which it totally works for me. Would I like to see more in the Witcher universe with anime, or, with any kind of style, like animation or anime or whatever style they want to do? Yes. Yes, please. I love animation, as I stated here multiple times. And sometimes I even prefer it over live action. And it's just because it's so cohesive in its style. It's not like you're trying to blend 3D elements with live action. You know what I mean? Like, as long as it's all kind of like in the same style and stuff like that, and the stuff you can do with camera angles and extreme poses and stuff like that too, it just makes it so like epic. And you have the Kill Bill, they try to replicate, you know what I mean? Like, and it's like all this time they've always tried to replicate these awesome poses and camera stuff that you can do with 2D animation. And I mean, we're getting closer. We are getting closer, especially with 3D stuff, because Arcane, another Netflix series, if you guys haven't watched it, one of me and Kyle's favorites, trying to get John to watch it. It's so good. It's so good. And it's just so cool, because it's like, here's a great show that's a animation that Netflix is doing. It's like, here's another one. It's like, what else do they have, man? Keep it coming. Keep it coming. I'm loving it. I am loving it.
I do like that. It sounds like, especially what you were saying, they're doing quite a variety and breadth of content. Like, that's hardcore 3D that they did there. This is 2D kind of anime type style, and yet they're all very high quality, and they're reaching out to different studios to do this stuff, and it's really, really fun. And for Witcher content, I feel like the anime style works really well, because they're kind of able to exaggerate a little bit more. I know in season 1, Nick and I think a lot of other people, and we're guessing it was kind of budgetary constraints, but say, I think from season 1, the golden dragon people always look at, and they're like, oh my gosh, it looked so weird and rough. But if they would have done that as an animated character in this anime, it would have fit in, because it was animated along with everything else. It probably would have fit in fine. And so I feel like you can exaggerate and do a little bit more in this and get away with it easier than live action's hard, especially when you're adding in visual effects and special effects after the fact, because it has to fit in, and it gets very hard to make look convincing in a way that it's fun to make things look surreal and otherworldly when it's in animated form or something else, because it doesn't have to look real. Whereas live action, it has to blend in well enough, or you get really weird stuff. You're like, that doesn't look right. And then it takes you out of it. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So some story stuff. We talked about the visuals. Did this remind you of the 300 Spartans? I don't know why I was thinking about 300 and how they train these kids in harsh conditions, the grit, and train them to be killers. You know what I mean? It just that's what I saw, when these kids were out there in the middle of nowhere, fighting for their lives and dying. I'm like, dude, this is totally 300 in animation or fantasy book lore mode.
Well, I mean, even if not just even 300, just, the Romans, the Spartans, where they did take away, real
Greeks,
life stuff.
Right?
Where
Greeks, right?
The Greeks, not so.
The
Greeks,
the Spartans
were more
Greeks,
peaceful.
right? The 300.
Well, Roman. The different cities, different
this
sections.
Isn't a history
right?
channel.
Yes, the Romans, and then you had the Spartans, the other subsection.
Well, I was
the Greeks
thinking
were more
of
peaceful.
the movie 300. The
yes,
Spartans.
but that's but
that's Greek, right? It was the Greek and Persian War. Comment down below. I believe I'm right on this one.
Pretty sure the Romans were more warlike. Greeks were more peaceful, artistry. But anyway, they did take them away very young and put them together. And the context is different, but I'm sure the original author that authored this stuff probably did draw from that. And it's cool. Like, it's fun that you can look at 300 and see that, and you can look at The Witcher and see that. And maybe he didn't, like, maybe not. It's a Polish author, so maybe he didn't draw from that the way that we would think, you know, that maybe we would think of that because we get so much exposure to that. But it's cool to be able to see those parallels and be able to see potential
100%.
inspiration and stuff like that. But yeah, it definitely has those parallels, and it's really fun. I can't remember, did they get into the conjunction of spheres and, you know, how you got Witchers? It's funny, we watched
a little bit.
You know, we watched Witcher 2, and then we watched this like literally the day after we finished season 2. And so, like, I'm like, wait, was this season 2 or was this the animated one? I'm getting confused.
We got into it a little bit. We found out that they were making monsters to make more money.
That's right. And then we got a lot of exposure to the Trial of the Grass. No, that was season 2. I'm completely confused on everything
we
right
kind
now.
of just got like a little bit of the trials of like what the kids went through.
Yes.
It was more like the group trials. And it was kind of short. It wasn't like we spent too much time there and then he was an adult. And then it really shows how Witchers don't age too. Because it was funny because you don't really get that in the show because like Geralt and Yennefer, they don't really age.
No. Yeah,
when that's who we would compare them with, like with the time jumps and all this stuff. So they're just kind of staying the same age, even though Witchers live like a really long time, I guess, because this lady's old and he hasn't really aged at all, kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. You mean Vesemir in this case, right?
Yes, and I don't remember his girlfriend's name. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, girlfriend lady. We forgot your name. You died. It's okay. You're dead. We don't remember. It's fine. You dead. You dead.
It's all right. We just wanted to see the bald kid who was
Gerard Butler.
Yeah, no, but like it's so funny because he has like all this white beautiful hair. He doesn't even have eyebrows as a kid. I want to know the story of how the magic gave him eyebrows.
Trial of the Grasses. He's growing white grass out of his hair. Yeah.
Did they do that on purpose because they didn't want to show the white hair?
Show who it was. Maybe it would have been too easy. I don't know.
Oh, it's a white hair kid. Who else has white hair in this world?
The one that ran away. As soon as they're like, oh, he was running away, that's where he knew the passage was like, I bet that's Geralt. They're just trying to do a little twist. And they did a little twist. And like, yeah. But it was fun. Like, I liked a little bit more world building of this is the group trials. We already knew about the Trials of the Grasses from the games. I haven't read the books yet, but then these things are specifically referenced in season 2 when Vesemir is potentially going to start the Trial of the Grasses with Ciri, and Geralt's like no, definitely not. They reference in season 2 this battle where people are storming, Kaer Morhen,
and that's why everything's beat up.
Yeah, and everything's beat up, and there's no more Witchers, and no more Witchers can be made. And like, oh, cool, this is like good story. Now, again, the original author would consider all this fan fiction, but it's kind of cool that they have this here.
So those kids that escaped, they were the last of the Witchers.
Supposedly. Now, in the games, you have other schools of Witchers, so I don't know if I don't know if that was the only like way that they can make other ones, or like it's been a while since The Witcher 3 was around and I played that, but I don't know if you can't make any Witchers anywhere or it's just that one spot in Kaer Morhen. But yeah, as far as the way they've paved it or painted the picture in the shows is that
which is also different from the movies or the books. The books is different from the game, so like the lore could be different from the game, and I think they're going heavy on the books for the material, I think, for the series and the animation.
Well, so we've gotten some really cool comments.
I don't know actually.
So a gentleman that had read the books and was commenting about season 2, he was saying, he's like, yeah, the first episode of season 2, they followed the book pretty closely. Aside from Ciri shouldn't have been there. Aside from that, they departed greatly, and it was almost nothing from the books. Okay. Even though it's very interesting.
They claim they're following from the books. Then.
They claimed early on that they were going to follow the books very closely, but then they just, aside from that first episode, they just kind of went off on their own. So it's very interesting how they're kind of, which is, I can't completely blame them because you follow exactly along. Everybody's like, all right, this is going to happen. This is going to happen.
We know the story.
I would love to hear those conversations in the writing rooms. All right, are we going to stick to this, or are we going to go on our own journey, and how close are we going to follow this? Yeah. I mean, it's the same conversations they have with Lord of the Rings. Like, do we need to have Tom Bombadil? Like, is this important? It's like, it's very interesting.
Can we just add a quote of his? Yeah.
Yeah. I think if you were going to do an expansion of the world and a side character story, honestly, I wish we got more shows and movie sequels like this. When we just covered The Matrix 4 Resurrections, I wish we had a movie like this, where it was a character from that world, in that world, maybe before or maybe after, but it's not Neo and it's not Trinity. It's something else happened in that world.
So if it was to follow the steps, it would be Morpheus's story and how he got out. Maybe
that would have been cool. That would have been. Now it has to be Lawrence Fishburne.
There might be some anime stuff out there. I don't watch all the extended Matrix stuff, so there might be stuff like that out there. I have no idea, but that would be cool if it was. If it is, please let us know. We want to watch.
But yeah, so if you had to rate this 0 to 5,
0 to 5, ooh,
0 to 5, or 0 to 5 stars. We'll do stars.
I'll give it a good 4 stars.
Yeah,
I enjoyed it. It's not like the most mind bending. I'm a big fan of just fantasy stuff too, and and I think it always looks good in 2D. You know what I mean? Sometimes like fire and stuff, like it just. And I'm such a big fan of the Avatar Last Airbender series, where like anything that kind of even resembles character designs closely to that, I'm like, oh, I'm in. Like, it's like, I love this world.
Yeah, everything I was hoping to get out of this show, it delivered. Now, I wasn't going in with huge, high expectations, but
the best way to enter anything.
Yeah, but it was completely an enjoyable experience. So I really enjoyed it. Yeah. All right, guys. So we have covered season 1 and season 2 of The Witcher, both visual effects and episode breakdowns and season recaps. So check that out if you're interested in that. Obviously, we're covering some more extended lore and things like that as well. We may cover some game stuff down the road as well. So check out AsArt.space for the audio and video content. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you on the next AsArt.